In the previous video, we talked about segues, and we kind of touched on the different navigation options, but we didn't really go into detail on what they are. So in this video, we will cover performing a segue, which we kind of saw in the last video, but we will also discuss pushing view controllers and presenting view controllers and what the differences are, along with dismissing those view controllers or popping those view controllers, depending on what kind of segue is performed. In the last video, we briefly touched that a navigation controller can conflict with another navigation controller. And that's part of how the navigation controller stack works. So this navigation controller has a root view controller, which is the view controller that is embedded inside of this navigation controller. In this case, it would be the create entry view controller. If we look at our entry list, this navigation controller has a root view controller of the entry list, and this is doing a segue of type show or push to the create entry. So inside of our application, when we select an entry, it pushes the create entry view controller onto the navigation stack. So the navigation controller will have a root view controller of entry list, and then that create view controller will push our entry list down into the stack, and it will show our create entry. And then when we hit the back button, it will pop that view controller off of the stack and go back to the root view controller. If we go to the create entry storyboard, when we had our initial entry point of the navigation controller, it was trying to create another navigation stack and put that stack inside of our show segue. And that was causing it to fail, because you can't have a navigation stack inside of a navigation stack. But when we put it onto our create entry, it is only bringing this view controller here onto the stack, and this navigation controller is just acting as a template for us to be able to see how our view is going to look, but it's never actually being created. It's only creating this create entry view controller, and that is why it's able to work. So we can demonstrate that by going to our journal, changing the main interface to our create entry, and when we run that, we'll see that a navigation stack is not being created. It's just that create entry. See how there's no navigation bar. So let's change this back to our main storyboard. And let's talk about how we can dismiss view controllers. In the previous video, we saw when we had that add button, we were using a present modally segue, and that brought the view controller up from the bottom, and it replaced our navigation stack. The X button was then used to be able to dismiss the view controller using that dismiss animated with a completion. With our navigation stack, we have to push and pop view controllers. So if we go to our create entry, let's go to our save button, and instead of doing a dismiss, we will have to call our navigation controller, and we will have to pop the view controller off of the stack. So we can do navigation controller dot pop view controller. So if we run the application now, we can go into a journal entry, and then when we hit save, it will not work because our create entry, where it's trying to pop the view controller, we have a guardlet title, and we're checking to see if it's empty, and right now it's empty, so it's never executing this code. So let's go ahead and cut that and place it at the top, demonstrate that it does work. So we will run the application again, and we will select an entry, and then hit the save button, and it pops the view controller off and brings us back to the navigation stack. In the final video, we will go over creating a tabbed application, or embedding our views into a tab bar. See you then.